70-year-old woman was beaten black and blue. Her fault? She is the mother of a political worker in Bengal. Thousands of cases of violence have been reported in West Bengal for 2021 assembly elections. The state has a history of political violence during elections. 16 political workers across India were killed during the Lok Sabha elections of 2014. Bengal has witnessed 365 politically motivated murders from 1999 to 2016. Saiket Bhawal, a BJP worker, was beaten to death in southern Bengal in December 2020. BJP accused the goons of being associated with the TMC party. However, the ruling party denied all charges. Following this was another tension that erupted in West Bengal's Howrah. Dharmendra Singh, a TMC supporter, was shot dead by an unidentified gunman. TMC accused the BJP party. The West Bengal Assembly election is likely to be held in 8 phases this year. 78,000 polling booths and 65 million voters will take part in the electoral process. The big question that many are asking is, who is responsible for the Bengal election violence? Shivani Singh, Democracy News Live, New Delhi.
Good evening, I'm Rohit Gandhi and you're watching Democracy News Live. Welcome to our show, It Matters. Today, we're going to talk about the unrest in the Indian state of West Bengal. As elections approach, the turmoil in the state seems to rise. Thousands of lives have been lost in election processes around the country in the last few years. The Bharatiya Janata Party, the Trinamool Congress Party, and other parties have been accusing each other of abusing and murdering their representatives. Nobody has owned up for the violence, but who is responsible for the violence? Why do we hear a tremendous lot more about violence in elections than in other parts of the country? What's different in Bengal that's making this happen? And I think that's a question many people are asking around the country. How come Bengal, which is known to be a well-cultured, educated place, has got so much violence around elections? And if you see the way the violence happens and the brutality of the killing and the fierce fighting that happens on the streets, it's something to watch out for. Burning people's homes, vehicles, beating them black and blue, using small firearms to kill each other. What's going wrong? That's something we want to ask and we want to understand today. We've called a panelist for our show. First of all, let me introduce Dr. Professor Ujjwal K. Chaudhary. He's the Pro Vice Chancellor of RMS University, Kolkata. He is, taught at many universities around the country. He's certainly seen what the landscape looks like. Also joining us is Rakhi Mitra. She's the State Secretary of the BJP Mahila Morcha, which means the BJP's women's wing. Also joining us today is Abhishek Roy. He's a member of the social media cell of South Kolkata Trinamool Congress. Thank you very much, all three of you, for joining me. Let me first go to Dr. Chaudhary. Dr. Chaudhary, you've seen elections in many parts of this country, and obviously Bengal, you understand Bengal quite well. Explain to me, when somebody else looks at Bengal and the violence that's going on, what's happening here? Why is so much violence?
First of all, the violence in Bengal politics is not just about elections. Election is a time when it gets noticed a lot and when it gets intensified even more. But violence has been there on an ideological plank from very long time. Just to refresh the memory, 1953, 1 paisa increase of tram fare led to 1 paisa Andolan, Ek Paisa Andolan, in which buses, trams were burned, a lot of people were injured, some of the youths were killed even in police firing, and many things happened. 1950s, across 1950s, the food movement, which underlined food insecurity in the country and particularly Bengal at that time, post-independence, the food movement was very famous. 1967, the Naxalbari movement, the Spring Thunder as it was called by the Chinese Communist Party. Political power flows from the barrel of the gun. That was the slogan at the time, which actually politically institutionalized violence in a way. And there was also repression by the police much beyond what a democratic government should ideally have. 1960s and 70s, violence on perceived class enemies and states' violent repression. Both happened at the same time. States' class enemies violence by the Naxalites and very repressive response by the police that time under the Congress government. In fact, I would like to remind everyone Baranagar, Kashipur, Barasat incidents, more than 100 young people were killed by the police at that time. Brutalized politics beyond that, after that. And on all these things of the 60s and 70s, Pulitzer winning Jhumpa Lahiri has come out with a novel called The Lowland. And The Lowland actually throws good insight into the cases of violence there.
Sure.
Now, coming to the current situation, 71 Hemanta Basu, Ajit Biswas killing, and for then moving on to Mamata Banerjee in 1990, beaten up black and blue with rods and what you call sticks by DYFI cadre. Her skull breaking down, broke apart, and she was in intensive care unit for a very long time. July 21st, 1996, Writers Building Abhiyan by Mamata led group, which was police fired upon by the police, killing 13 youths, which is still celebrated as Shahid Divas by Mamata Banerjee's party. 2006 to 8, Singur movement on this land where Tata wanted Nano to come up, or Nandigram war zone, which was a land being taken up by the left front government for a corporate house. These two brought in huge amount of violence between CPM and TMC. The armored armed guys of CPM between 2007 and 10 created a lot of violence at that point of time. Lalgarh, CPI-ML led by Chhatradhar Mahato, which fought the CPM left government. Today Mahato is in TMC. People's War Group, Kisanji led People's War Group, had a huge history of violence between 2010 and 12. So 1970s to 1990s, there were several cases of custodial repression and encounter killings that became very, very common. By the way, a very well-known Bengali actor, Uttam Kumar, was witness to an encounter killing in the Maidan, and that's quite well known. So today, when stones are lobbed on VIP cars, particularly on the car in which BJP President Nadda was there, this is nothing in comparison to what violence Bengal has seen all through the last 70 years.
Sure.
Today, this
Sure.
has come. I would like to end up with this one observation. Whenever there was an acute challenge to the ruling party, there has been violence during elections. So we saw this violence in 1977-78 when Congress power went to the United Front. We saw this violence once again strongly in 2011 when left front power went to Trinamool Congress. And today we are seeing another spate of violence because the intensity of competitive politics have come to another headway. And there is almost forces on both sides strong enough to dislodge TMC to protect its turf and BJP to dislodge TMC. So we are seeing this third big round as on today.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, now it's a very important point. Ms. Mitra, let me bring you in here. Explain to me, when you see the violence on the street, and I know, and I'm not here to figure out which party is doing violence and who is it against, because that's not what we can solve here today. But what we do need to figure out and pinpoint is why such a large-scale violence has taken place in Bengal in the history, as Dr. Chaudhary has told us about, and we see it in present situation as well. What's that's missing that there is violence in elections?
Before I answer your question, I think Professor Chaudhary has missed out one major incident of West Bengal violence. That is the killing of the Dalit refugees in Marichapi. It was a planned killing, a planned way of wiping out the refugees who were used as vote banks for the CPM. I think Professor Chaudhary has missed that. We cannot forget that in history.
Sure,
But
no,
now
no,
let me
absolutely.
come to your
Sure,
question.
sure.
Well, now let me come to the question now. Violence is something that Mamata Banerjee seems to have inherited from the communist regime. We have seen during the Naxal movement the way the Naxals were killed by the Congress people that time. It seems that the CPM right now in West Bengal, they have forgotten, the Congress has forgotten what they did together, what they did to one another. And right now they are there with another party which is calling itself secular. Indian Secular Front. That is Abbas Siddiqui, the man who has openly proclaimed that he is going to give independence to West Bengal. I can always ask the viewers, what independence is he talking about? A man cannot be called secular who practices Sharia law openly. That is what he does. How can you call him a secular man? And just because CPM has gone down to 7%, they want to be in relevance right now. And so they have joined hands with Congress and with this Abbas Siddiqui, whom they are proclaiming to be a messiah of secularism. Let me ask you a few things. Uh, but it was not a shock for us. It was not the day we found him along with CPM and Congress at the brigade. Because that day he spoke not only about independence, he said, "Bhagidar hote eshechi, তোষণ করতে আসিনি." That was his first sentence. Then he was using words which Mamta Banerjee says Hindi. When we speak Hindi, she says we are bohiragotos, outsiders. And he was asking people, Apnara pani kheyechen? I do not think pani is a Bengali word. Then I'm talking about the Congress right now. Congress is a 100-year-old party. They say they're a party with ideologies. Right in 2011, Congress had said TMC is very good, the CPM is bad. 2014, they said all the parties are bad. 2016, CPM is again good for them. 2019, CPM is again bad for them. 2021, now they are very good friends. So, since the panchayat elections, the violence that we have seen in Bengal, you cannot kill a person just because their political ideologies do not match yours. Tell me, you can kill a Karyakarta. Today, I am a BJP Karyakarta. You can always kill me. But why will you attack my 70-year mother? That old lady, she is an 80-year-old lady. Who gave her and her Karyakartas the right to kill or to harm a mother? And she calls herself the daughter of Bengal. Do we really, the Bengal, the seat of culture and learning, do we really need a daughter like this?
Miss Mitra, I don't want to get into in terms of who did it and who didn't do it because honestly, we are not an
But this
investigation
violence, we are
agency.
facing it.
Yes,
We
ma'am. I
are facing
understand.
it.
I understand.
130 plus Karyakartas have been killed. They have been killed, they have been hung just because of their ideology.
But the
They
accusations
cannot,
is on
we
both
are,
sides, right? Accusations are all
we,
sides.
BJP is not in power in West Bengal. That should be remembered. Before you accuse a person, you should remember it is Mamta Banerjee who is in power. If she is accusing BJP, then she should give us the proof. The administration lies in her hands, not in ours. Then she should be giving us the proof that yes, BJP has done this or BJP has killed her Karyakartas. She has no proof. Even when we are talking about the breaking of that Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar bust, we always hear people saying that BJP broke that bust of Vidyasagar. If you have the CCTV evidence, give it to us. This is a digital age. You cannot say that just like that, that they did it and you cannot give us any evidence. Why
Sure.
are we so frightened? Do you know?
So what
Nobody,
you're
right now,
saying,
nobody.
Miss Mitra, what you're saying is the only violence that's taking place is from the TMC side or the
And
communist
now it's going to
side.
increase. And now wait for the fun to begin.
But there is no violence happening from your party side. That's your stand, correct?
No, we are not in power here. We
Okay,
cannot. The
okay,
police and
okay.
the administration is under us.
I'll take your word for it. Let me now bring in Mr. Roy. Mr. Roy, there are a lot of accusations that have, come in terms of that, your party has had a history of violence as well. But, I'm not going to be debating that here because that's not what I can actually do justice to, in all honesty. But what I can do justice to is to begin to understand that how come a state with such good quality education, cultural background, a moral fabric of, great history, have so much of violence. And that's one of the issues I want to talk about. Why so much violence in Bengal?
देखिए, मैं एक ही बात कहना चाहता हूँ कि वायलेंस तो हम लोग इतना बचपन से इतना बड़ा हो गया, लेकिन कभी भी इलेक्शन के टाइम वायलेंस हम लोग देखा नहीं है। बंगाल में वायलेंस कभी हम लोग देखा ही नहीं है, क्योंकि हम लोग देखा है यूपी में अगर वोट होता है तो वायलेंस हम लोग देखते हैं, टीवी में दिखता है। आप लोग कभी अपने बंगाली चैनल या जितना भी चैनल है आप लोग का, तो कभी हम लोग वायलेंस तो देखा ही नहीं है। तो वायलेंस होता है तो यूपी में होता है, और ये बंगाल का कल्चर नहीं कि इलेक्शन में हम पहले, इलेक्शन के पहले हम लोग वायलेंस करें और दूसरा जो टीम है उनको हम लोग ये करें। तो हम लोग एक ही चीज़ में भरोसा करते हैं कि आदमी लोग जो इलेक्शन में वोट देगा, जनगण उसका जो, वो लोग जो कहना चाहते हैं, वो लोग जो करना चाहते हैं, वो लोग वोट के थ्रू देगा। और वो ममता बनर्जी को हर टाइम मिलता है 365 डेज। ममता बनर्जी का पार्टी एंड ममता बनर्जी का टीम हर पाड़ा में, हर गली में, हर वार्ड में, हर इलाका में रहता है। आदमी का सुख दुख में उसके साथ में रहता है। यही है ममता बनर्जी का गवर्नमेंट। वायलेंस जो लोग बोलता है, ये लोग जो नया नया पार्टी अभी बंगाल में आया है, अभी भारतीय जनता पार्टी, पहले तो दिखता नहीं था, अभी दिख रहा है थोड़ा थोड़ा, क्योंकि अभी वो लोग काम ही ऐसा कर रहे हैं कि हम लोग का पार्टी से भगा के आदमी लोग को ले जा रहे। तो ऐसे करके ले जाता है का खेल, वो लोग खेल रहे तो वो लोग खेले, तो खेलने से कुछ नहीं होगा। आखिरी बात और आखिरी काम तो जनगण करेगा। जनगण जिसको चाहता है वही आएगा, और जनगण ममता बनर्जी को पूरी सपोर्ट करता है, क्योंकि ममता बनर्जी का गवर्नमेंट हर एक के लिए, हर युवा के लिए, हर आदमी के लिए कहीं ना कहीं ममता बनर्जी का प्रकल्प हम लोग को हेल्प कर रहे हैं। तो इसीलिए जो पीपल सोचेगा वही समझेगा और वही वोट में देगा। और
मिस्टर रॉय,
वोट
पर
आने वाला
बाकी
है।
बाकी दोनों पैनलिस्ट तो बोल रहे हैं कि वायलेंस हमेशा हो रहा है बंगाल के अंदर, और वायलेंस इलेक्शन का भी हिस्सा रहा है। आप उनको कैसे रिस्पॉन्ड करेंगे?
नहीं, हम तो देखिए, जब भी इलेक्शन होता है कोई भी पार्टी नहीं बोलता है कि अच्छा वोट नहीं हुआ है। जो भी इलेक्शन के बाद प्रेस मीट करता है उस टाइम बोलता है हाँ शांतिपूर्ण इलेक्शन हुआ। ये बीजेपी गवर्नमेंट भी लास्ट इलेक्शन में किया था, उसके पहले सीपीएम भी किया था, कांग्रेस भी किया था। तब कैसे आपको पता चला कि ये इलेक्शन वायलेंस के साथ हुआ है? जब ही इलेक्शन हुआ है उसके बाद में जब प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करता है, तभी तो गवर्नमेंट के सामने जो प्रेस का, जो पार्टी प्रेस करता है, या कांग्रेस या बीजेपी या सीपीएम, वो लोग तो बोलता ही है कि इलेक्शन इज क्वाइट गुड। तो यहाँ पे गलती कहाँ? अगर गलती होता तो वो लोग ही बोलता। फिर इलेक्शन जब आता है फिर दूसरा बार, उस टाइम वो लोग चिल्लाता है वायलेंस है, वायलेंस है, बंगाल में वायलेंस है। बंगाल यूपी नहीं है, बंगाल बंगाल है, कल्चर है यहाँ पे। यहाँ पे ममता बनर्जी का सरकार है, सबको लेके चलता है, हम आप सबको लेके चलता है। और ममता बनर्जी सरकार 365 दिन आदमी के साथ रहता है। ये बीजेपी या कांग्रेस या सीपीएम इन लोग को दिखता नहीं है। अम्फान से लेके कोविड-19 के पहला दिन से अपना चीफ मिनिस्टर वहां रास्ता में था। ममता बनर्जी रास्ता में उतर के अम्फान का मुकाबला किया, कोविड-19 का मुकाबला किया। लॉकडाउन में हम लोग के साथ थे। अम्फान में पूरा वेस्ट बंगाल घूम के गया। अम्फान के पहले आने वाले का 48 आवर्स से नवान्न में बैठा था। वो सर्वे कर रहे थे कि क्या से
Sure.
क्या प्रिकॉशन ले सकता है।
Good.
ये
No,
ममता बनर्जी।
I get you. Let me get. So what Mr. Abhishek Roy is saying is he's from the TMC party. He's from the Youth Congress, and what he's saying is that there isn't violence in Bengal. That's not the ethos of Bengal, and the accusations either of the BJP or the Congress are wrong about the violence that is conducted. Let me go back to Dr. Chaudhary. Dr. Chaudhary, give me a little bit of a sense in terms of why is there so much of a disconnect here? On one hand, we obviously know of the history of the violence. And the other end, we're talking about that violence doesn't take place at all. So obviously there is a major disconnect.
So
Explain
first
to
of
me.
all, yeah, I will do
So-
that. First of all, this historical context we have already put forth, that there has been violence on political ideology, less on caste and communal issues, as in the Hindi heartland. The Hindi heartland violence in politics is a disguised caste and communal conflict many a time, most of the times. But whereas in Bengal, irrespective of caste and community, the violence has been more ideologically garnered, ideologically directed. So this is historically proven. I don't have to. I have already cited some examples, and I'm sorry that Morit Jhapi case I forgot. I missed out in the hurry. Yes, she's right. The madam is right in mentioning Morit Jhapi case. Coming back to the current situation, just see 2019 Parliament election, the 100 days before 2019 Parliament elections in Bengal, and see now 100 days before the assembly elections, the spate of violence has gone up, and reporting on violence has also gone up. So I do not know if it is a very conscious way to divert the narrative from issues of governance to issues of immediate concern like violence. So it does not mean that there is no violence. That's not the question. But that's not the only issue on which a nation or a state or a people vote. People vote on governance issues. There is a track record of 7 years of the central government. There is a track record of 10 years of the state government. Now, these two are the main contestants as on today. And opposition, the second opposition is left and Congress, who have past track records, whatever they have. So the question is that rather than discussion on the track records of one another, why is petrol diesel price increasing on one side, and on the other side, why certain welfare measures did not reach the people, which Mr. Roy has rightly said there were many welfare measures, but welfare measures did not reach the people was the allegation against Mamata Banerjee, which now she had brought Duare Sarkar, governance at your doorstep, only before some 40-50 days before the election. So the question is, the focus on violence is always 100 days before the election. That is one way to take away the narrative. That's one point I wanted to tell without pointing fingers. Second point, someone in opposition does not mean they don't do violence. By the way, Bengal has shown that people in opposition have been equally or more engaged in violence, whether it was the left violence against Congress in power or Trinamool led violence against CPM in power, and at times BJP led violence against Trinamool in power. So while the ruling party has the police in its hand, that's right, but on the other hand, but the police has also been, there are many cases, several police officers have been intimidated by central dictums. They have been called to center without even informing the state government in recent times. That's another issue. But the point I'm trying to say, to tell that opposition can never indulge in violence is a very childish sort of a statement. Everywhere in the country, opposition has also indulged in violence, whichever is the opposition party in that state. And here also it's true. Your report has already your reporter's Shivani's story a little earlier has shown one case of Howrah when a Trinamool worker has been shot dead. There are several more cases. I am not getting into how many cases because I would not know. The
Sure.
BJP leader has claimed
Absolutely.
130. There is no police record of 130, at least I don't know. But Trinamool also calls of some 70, 80 deaths and BJP's hands. I also don't know whether that's right or wrong. But the fact is, violence is on both sides. And
I remember even way back in 2016 when there was a lot of violence happening between two parties. I know there was a tremendous amount of pressure coming in from Delhi to make sure that that violence was locked and people were inside, and news channels were being, siphoned off, orders on the back end to cover this and not to cover that. And I know a lot of that goes on, and a lot of control happens. Ms. Mitra, if you can shed a little light more on how is this going to be handled going forward? Is there a little bit of a diktat in terms of violence shouldn't take place?
Answer to what the TMC person said. He said, we are not scared. We are not scared. Mamata Banerjee is not scared. Then let me ask him, when the election commission declared that we should be having election in 8 phases, different 8 phases, why was Mamata Banerjee so perturbed? He should be having an answer for that. Because right from our childhood, we have seen election in many phases. That helps the people. She calls it, her government a sarkar of Ma Mati Manush. That helps the Manush. If you are having more phases, which helps the movement of the forces, we are going to bring in the central forces. So is that why she is perturbed? Now you can ask me what you were asking me. You were asking how it is to be controlled, right? Mr. Gandhi,
Me
you
the
were asking me how is the violence is to be
the
controlled.
one, the violence control. The second thing is, a lot of people have talked about the multiple phases of the polling happened because there
Yes,
was more required in terms of focus of the center on the
yes.
elections. Why was
Because
the
I
aberration on the multiple phases here?
because in the panchayat elections just before 2019, we have seen 30,000 people were not allowed just to fill in their nominations in the panchayat election. We do not want a repetition. We want that the people of Bengal should come out fearlessly because voting is a right of every Indian citizen. Adult franchise is a right, so everybody should have the right. And that is the reason Central Reserve Police Force is being brought here. We are going to ensure a smooth, fair, and free election. And that's the reason we are having it in so many phases. Nobody should be. If you are for the government, if you proclaim to be for a Mamati Manush Sarkar, you should be happy about the multiple phases. You should not be pointing fingers at the election commission and say that BJP is spending money on them. That is what the chief minister said. She insulted the election commission. She said BJP is using money. Was she talking about bribery? That those words were hurting because election commission, you put a charge of bribery on the election commission. That's something the Bengalis at least will not take it
Mr.
because they
Mr.
have
Abhishek
seen, and he was
Roy, let me
talking.
bring
And,
in.
and one more thing, he was also talking about Amphan and Corona. I think, especially the people of Kolkata, they have seen the corruption during Amphan because just 2 days after Amphan, the Prime Minister had visited and she had asked for money, which she had given 1,000 crore just 2 days. And then in November 2020, 2,708 crores was given. Then why are still the people of North Chobbish Pargona, they did not even get a tarpaulin? They did not get a tarpaulin. Their houses were blown off. They did not get a tarpaulin till today. Why is that? When
Let
you
me
get
bring in Mr. Siddha.
3,708 crores.
Let me bring in Mr. Abhishek Roy. Mr. Abhishek Roy, first of all, I think the accusation the BJP member is making is that not enough was done during Corona. Well, that is on one end. On the other end, why are multiple phases an issue for Trinamool Congress?
Please pardon your question.
I said, let me ask it one by one. Why is it a challenge to have the election in multiple phases? What's wrong with that?
देखिए, एक चीज मैं क्लियरली बताना चाहता हूँ आपको, ये मिस्टर गांधी और मिस मैडम राखी मैडम को भी मैं बताना चाहता हूँ कि बंगाल में इतना फेज में इलेक्शन का जरूरत था ही नहीं, लेकिन वो लोग करना चाहता है, सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट करना चाहता है, इलेक्शन कमीशन करना चाहता है, इसीलिए वो लोग कर रहे हैं. जैसे बिहार पे देखिए या कहीं और देखिए, वहां पे भी इलेक्शन हुआ है, कुछ दिन पहले ही हुआ है, लेकिन इतना फेज में नहीं हुआ है. लेकिन बंगाल अभी बीजेपी का एक ही इच्छा है कि बंगाल को भी वो लोग लेगा. तो ये जो सपना है, ये सपना ही रह जाएगा, क्योंकि बंगाल के जनता चाहता है कि ममता बनर्जी का सरकार ही रहे, क्योंकि ममता बनर्जी का सरकार हर टाइम बंगाल के गवर्नमेंट के साथ, बंगाल के हर एक आदमी के साथ, हर एक आदमी के साथ, हर एक घर के साथ बंगाल की चीफ मिनिस्टर जुड़ा हुआ है. कोई भी स्टेट में जाइए, लेकिन आपका सवाल आप ममता बनर्जी से डायरेक्ट नहीं कर सकता है, लेकिन ये बंगाल में ही आप अपना चीफ मिनिस्टर के साथ आपका कोई भी समस्या होने से आप डायरेक्टली बात कर सकते हैं. ये उन लोग को पता होना चाहिए. राखी मैडम ने बताया ना कि यहाँ पे प्रॉब्लम होता है, लेकिन यहाँ पे कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. हम लोग सिर्फ क्वेश्चन किया था, कुछ दिन पहले कहीं दूर में हमारा नेबरिंग कंट्री में, नेबरिंग स्टेट में इलेक्शन हुआ था, उस टाइम तो इतना फेज में नहीं हुआ था, तो वाई इनका वेस्ट बंगाल, यही हम लोग का सवाल था.
Understood. Dusra, the second accusation that Ms. Mitra is making is that not enough was done during Corona, and after Amphan, even though a lot of the money was given by the center, she said 1,000 and then 2,700 crores, nothing reached a lot of the people in Bengal, is her accusation. She said, quote unquote, that not a single tarpaulin reached 24th Paraganas North, and it's an accusation. You can answer it if you'd like. You don't have to answer if you don't.
No, मैं एक ही बात कहना चाहता हूँ कि आप लोग को जानना जरूरी है, जो भी मीडिया है, जो सोशल मीडिया में ये दिखाता है कि आम्फान में तृणमूल गवर्नमेंट और ममता बनर्जी क्या किया है, ये पहले वो राखी मैडम को जानना जरूरत है. क्योंकि घर में बैठ के ये बात करने से सिर्फ हो नहीं जाता है. इलेक्शन में टीवी में आता है, ये फेसबुक में आता हूँ और कुछ बातें बोल देता हूँ और आदमी को कंफ्यूज कर देता है. ये बीजेपी का काम है. लेकिन आम्फान के पहले दिन से या कोरोना की पहले दिन से, कोविड-19 के पहले दिन से जो आदमी रास्ते में था, उनका नाम है ममता बनर्जी. ममता बनर्जी छोड़ के और उनका पार्टी का आदमी लोग को छोड़ के कहीं भी वेस्ट बंगाल के कहीं कोना में किसी को नहीं दिखा गया था, क्योंकि वो लोग बंगाल में था ही नहीं, वो घर में चुपचाप बैठा हुआ था डर के वजह से, क्योंकि मेरे को कोविड ना हो जाए या अम्फान में हम कैसे जाएंगे, यही बोल के बीजेपी पार्टी, कांग्रेस पार्टी, सीपीएम पार्टी, जितना भी पार्टी है वो यही करा था। लेकिन तृणमूल कांग्रेस का सुप्रीमो एवं वेस्ट बंगाल का चीफ मिनिस्टर ममता बनर्जी ने रास्ता में उतर के पहला दिन से अम्फान का 48 घंटा पहले से नवान्नो में बैठा था और वो ट्रैक कर रहे थे अम्फान का हर एक मूवमेंट को। उसके बाद अम्फान के पहले दिन के जैसे 250 साल में ऐसा अम्फान बोल के एक शक्तिशाली तूफान आया था जो पहले कभी भी कोई वेस्ट बंगाल में क्या इंडिया में कहीं भी नहीं दिखा गया था। यह अम्फान बहुत ही सुपर साइक्लोन था और बंगाल को पूरा तोड़ दिया था। लेकिन ममता बनर्जी का गवर्नमेंट, आप अभी कहीं पे भी जाइए, बंगाल के हर एक कोना में जाइए, देखेंगे बंगाल का हर एक कोना फिर से रिस्ट्रक्चर हो गया है। ममता बनर्जी किया है, ममता बनर्जी का फंड से हुआ है। और जो बोला ना प्रधानमंत्री आया था हेलीकॉप्टर करके घुमा था चीफ मिनिस्टर के साथ, वादा किया था पैसा देने के लिए, लेकिन वादा उनका वही अच्छे दिन आने वाला है जैसा हो गया है कि अच्छा दिन आने वाला, 15 लाख रुपया हर एक भारतीय का अकाउंट में आने वाला है, ये सपना ही सच कभी नहीं होगा। तो ये भी कहानी बनने का चल गया था। 1,000 करोड़ रुपया दे के बोला था बाकी पैसा भेजेंगे, अभी तक भेजा नहीं है। सिर्फ बोलने में बीजेपी को लोग को ऐसे कहता लगता है। और बीजेपी का जो लीडर दिल्ली से आता है ना, वो वेस्ट बंगाल का कहीं का नाम भी ठीक से नहीं पता है, कोई ब्लॉक का नाम पता नहीं है, कोई जिला का नाम नहीं पता है। अगर आप पूछेंगे किसी लीडर से, दिल्ली वाला लीडर से, वो बोल नहीं सकेगा। तो इसीलिए तो बोलना ही पड़ेगा भाई, दिल्ली का आदमी दिल्ली में रहो और बांग्ला का लड़की बांग्ला देख लेगा, आप लोग को चिंता करने का जरूरत नहीं है। बांग्ला का जनगण वो ये अपना वोट अपने दे के बीजेपी को इलेक्शन में समझ देगा कि बंगाल में किसका जरूरत है और किसका जरूरत नहीं है। ये
Alright.
2 तारीख को पता चल जाएगा। बंगाल में मामाटी ममता बनर्जी का ही सरकार होगा, ममता बनर्जी बंगाल में रहेगा, क्योंकि हर एक आदमी बंगाल का यही चाहता है कि जो उसके साथ सारा साल रहता है, सारा दिन रहता है, सुख में रहता है, दुख में रहता है, वही ममता बनर्जी का सरकार फिर से थर्ड टाइम के लिए आएगा। और बीजेपी का हर एक लीडर का जो भी कहना है, जो सपना
Mr.
है,
Roy,
वो एकदम हट जाएगा।
Mr. Roy, I do want to, like when you talked about, the amount of money, over 4,000 crores was spent by the West Bengal government on the COVID crisis, and we've seen that. But at the same time, I think there is a massive disconnect between Delhi and West Bengal. That has been seen, and there is no doubt about it. There is a lot of pushback.
मिस्टर गांधी, आप सही
Mr.
बोल रहे हैं,
Gandhi,
क्योंकि
I would
दिल्ली
like
वाला जो है ना, दिल्ली में जो गवर्नमेंट बैठा हुआ है, मोदी जी का गवर्नमेंट, अमित शाह भाई का गवर्नमेंट, वो बंगाल को पैसा देना ही नहीं चाहता है, सिर्फ आके झूठ बोलता है, टीवी में आके सिर्फ झूठ ही बोल सकता है।
That's all right, Mr. Roy. I'll let Miss Mitra respond to it. Miss Mitra,
Mr. Gandhi, Mr.
let Miss
Roy,
Mitra respond to it. Go for it, Miss Mitra.
first let me thank Mr. Roy, because it seems he is a viewer of all my videos. He said just now that I make videos and I lie. So, Mr. Roy, why didn't you go to the court? I have been doing videos since long. You should have taken me to the court if I was lying, instead of sitting on this channel and calling me a liar. That is first thing. Secondly, the money that has come in the form of letters with the government stamp on it. So he cannot lie. He cannot lie about the money. Ask him that there was a gentleman in North Chabis Pargana. The father had 13 sons with all different surnames. They had a 4-storied house, and that person was a TMC person, and his 13 sons with all different surnames, they were given 20,000 rupees during the corona. How can that happen? Ask him to challenge me in court if he has the capability to do it. If he is calling me a liar, he should have taken me to the court.
I think that's an unfair. We don't like to get into that on our show. The idea on It Matters is to make sure that we actually have a debate around ideas. We talk about what's really important for us, and I think it's a given that there is tremendous violence that does take place in Bengal. What's it going to take for violence to be gone from, the electoral process in Bengal is something that one has to look at seriously. It has got to be a challenge on how to remove violence from elections in Bengal. So while I know there are guests with different opinions here, we have to make sure that it's isolated. The Election Commission must take responsibility that it would get these elections carried out in a free and fair manner without violence, without the threat of violence. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges as India moves forward. But the elections are coming up in West Bengal and we'll continue watching it. And I think the idea would be to plug the responsibility, to make sure that you can put the responsibility on the people who are involved in this violence. No election must be with violence. Then that's not a real election. Then that's not a democracy. Thank you for watching. Good night and good luck.